Hello and welcome to Black Dog Knits. My name is Delaney and today I'm going to be sharing with you a regular podcast where I share some of my recently finished objects, which a lot of them are gift knits, as well as some of my works in progress. And then I also have some acquisitions, some of which are yarn related and some of which are yarn related but not directly yarn. And so I'm excited to share with you about all of that. If any of this sounds interesting, please feel free to join me, grab your knitting, and let's get started. So before I jump in, if you've been here before, you probably recognize what I'm wearing, but I'll introduce it anyways. Today I'm wearing my Arctic Light sweater, which is the third one that I made in 3 months because of various things, which you have heard about in previous podcasts if you've been around. If not, you could go see that. And I made this out of Berroco Ultra Alpaca in the color avocado. I love this sweater. I wear it all the time. I think that the yarn is relatively soft. It did grow a fair amount in blocking, which is something to note if you are planning on using it. And yeah, I am wearing it because it's close to Christmas and I kind of wanted to wear something that was a little bit more Christmassy. So the nice thing about it is that it's not an actual Christmas sweater, so I can wear it pretty much anytime I want. So that's just a little bit about what I'm wearing. So as many of us are aware, the holidays are fast approaching. Christmas is in 2 days, and so I've been working a lot on gift knits, and I have several that I've finished very recently that I wanted to share before I gave them away. So why don't we start with a pair of mittens that I made for my dad. These are the Arched Gusset Mittens by Purl Soho, and here they are. I made the size large, and I used yarn that I got at Rhinebeck. This is actually yarn from, I think it's called Good Karma Soap and Yarn, which is funny because these gloves actually smell kind of good because of the soap I think that they make as well. And this is a 60% wool, 40% alpaca yarn. It's quite soft. The colorway is Cookie Monster, and I found that these knit up really fast. I actually hadn't knit mittens before. I knit one when I was learning how to knit, but I don't really count that. So this was really my first pair of mittens. And my dad loves the colors blue and gray, very similar to how I do as well. And I wanted to make him a pair of mittens. I figured that that would be a nice kind of gift for him. So I made him a pair of mittens, and I found that they were quite easy to do, and the pattern was free, which was also really great, especially for my first pair of mittens. One thing I would probably change if I were to make this pattern again is that instead of doing just all stockinette, I would do a ribbed cuff so that these kind of hug your hand a little bit better. I also noticed that even though I was keeping track of rows, or I thought I was, I think one mitten is slightly bigger than the other, so hopefully they both fit him. I haven't blocked these. I want to see how they fit his hands because they do have a fair amount of alpaca in them. If they're too small, I can always block them and try and stretch them a little bit to fit his hands. But I was really pleased with these. I actually made these during Thanksgiving when I wasn't in the same room as him, and then I was tempted to give them to him then just because I was so excited. And I asked my mom and my aunt, I was like, oh, should I give these to him now or should I wait until Christmas? And they were like, absolutely not, wait until Christmas. So I waited until Christmas. I have them, I'm ready to wrap them and everything. And he also loves cookies, and the fact that this is the Cookie Monster colorway I think is also very suited, well suited. So these are a pair of mittens that I finished somewhat recently, and yeah. And then this is not a gift knit, but it's something that I was a work in progress in my last episode, which is just a pair of vanilla socks that I made for my husband. Oops, I didn't weave in. I'm so bad about weaving in some of these ends in the very end. I don't know about you, but I really dislike weaving in ends, and so it's kind of the last thing that I have to do, and sometimes I just don't do it for a little while. So true confessions. But these are the socks that I made him. They look really big actually, but they're not. They fit his feet. I think that knit socks are just like, they look big because store-bought socks stretch so much, but they fit his feet. I made kind of a hybrid size between large and extra large. He did say that they're not loose on his feet, but not quite as tight as his other socks. And so I think in the future, if I were to make him another pair of socks, which is probably very likely, I would just make him the large ones so that they fit his feet a little bit more snug. But they're quite warm. This is made with Dachshund Daddy Knits yarn, which I also got at Rhinebeck, and it's a 75% superwash merino and 25% nylon. It's quite soft, and I think they're really fun. I think that he doesn't really wear this type of variation in color, but he has worn them several times, and so I am hopeful and will probably make him some more socks in the future. But I can just hold this up closely so you can see and appreciate the very nice coloring in the yarn. And yeah, I'm excited that he has these socks, and now we both have kind of crazy socks that we can wear together, which is fun. I also made another pair of socks recently, which I haven't even shown as a work in progress on this because it's been so long since I filmed a regular podcast episode, but I made the Hermione Everyday Socks, which is a free pattern on Ravelry. And I had some sock yarn that I bought a while ago. It's Kelbourne Woolens Perennial in the color silver. And I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with it. It's really soft yarn, and it's just a solid color. So I wanted to do something that had texture, but I am not a super like girly person, if that makes sense. And so I didn't want to do a pattern that was really lacy, or I don't know what I thought of as kind of girly, but I did still want to have some sort of texture. And so I found the Hermione Everyday Socks, and I felt like that was a good balance of texture without being too girly. So I really love this pattern. I knit these in like less than a week. I just was addicted to this pattern when I made it. And I'll hold it up closely so you can see the really pretty kind of like, it's not ribbing, but it's a 4-row repeat. It's actually kind of funny. In both of my socks, I have this like weird line right here. And I think I messed up the pattern in the same spot on both socks, which is kind of funny. But whatever, I don't really care. But anyways, this is a 4-row repeat pattern. It worked up really fast. I just used my 9-inch circular needles to make them. And it was funny because I started these also at Thanksgiving after I finished the mittens. I was like, oh, I need something else to make. So I grabbed my 9-inch circular needles and I brought this yarn with me, and I started casting it on, and my aunt was sitting with me at the time, and she saw the needles, and she was like, oh, what are you making? How do you use those? And when she saw the needles, she said that it looks like toothpicks with dental floss, which I thought was really funny. And now that she says that, I do agree with her, but it's very magical toothpicks and dental floss if you believe it to be so, because they can create socks. So one of the things that I love about these socks, besides from just the general pattern of it, is the heel flap. It's some really long name that I don't remember. It's like an eye stitch, whatever, of some sort, but I love the heel flap on these. It has such a pretty pattern. It's a double knit heel flap, and it's not kind of the traditional slip stitch heel flap. And it has this really like pretty kind of geometric pattern, and also because it's double knit, it's so squishy. And so I think that I'm probably going to use that heel flap in other socks, even if I'm knitting a different type of sock, just because I love the way that it looks, I love the way that it feels, and I just was very glad to have found a new heel kind of pattern and construction. So I don't really wear these socks out. I oftentimes actually have been finding that I wear them to bed because it's been so cold. It was actually 1 degree Fahrenheit when I woke up this morning, and that's really cold, to say the least. And so I have been wearing socks to bed because it's so cold at night. And I really find that they're quite warm, quite cozy, but this is, I don't remember what the percentages are. It's part superwash merino wool, it's part nylon. I think it's about 15% nylon. And then it also is, maybe it's 15% baby or Surrey alpaca, and then 60% superwash. That sounds about right to me. And so while these are quite soft, they are also a bit more delicate. So, and because I like these socks so much, I don't really want to wear them out. And so these are kind of more house socks, but I love them. I really want to make another pair in kind of a hardier yarn so that I can wear them more for everyday use. But I highly recommend this pattern. It was super easy. I think they only do, or in the pattern, there's only one number for the number of stitches that you cast on, but I just used the same number of stitches that I had done for a vanilla sock, and these socks fit perfectly. And I actually washed these socks at the same time as some socks that I had made that are just vanilla socks, and they're pretty much like spot on, exactly the same size. So if you find that the number of stitches in the pattern maybe doesn't seem aligned with what your foot size might be, you could probably use what you use for your vanilla sock cast on number of stitches to guide you to make these socks. So those are my Hermione everyday socks. I love them, and we'll definitely be making another pair in the future. Okay, another finished object that I have is actually a hat that I made for my brother. This is the hat. My family does Secret Santa for Christmas, and so I got my brother, and so I decided that I would make him a hat. I made my husband a windchief hat, and he was wearing it over Thanksgiving, so I showed it to my brother and I had him try it on, and so I kind of got a sense of what size head he has, and his head I think is a little bit bigger than my husband's, and so he had said that the hat that I made my husband was a little tight, and so I kind of used the number of stitches that I had used for his hat to kind of ballpark what I would make for this one. I did not make the windchief hat for this one just because the yarn is already so very variegated, and so I didn't want to kind of have too many distractions going on with a pattern as well as a variegated yarn, and so I just used the number of stitches that I would have cast on for that. I actually don't even think I did the same number. I just kind of ballparked it based off of that, and then I just did a plain stockinette hat. I will say I like the way that this yarn looks in the stockinette. I really like the fade. It kind of looks like, it kind of reminds me of like snowy trees, snowy birch trees in the winter or something. I don't love the way it looks in the ribbing. You can see it here. That's the stockinette part, and then this is the ribbing. I just like the way that the stockinette looks more, and then I just did I divided the stitches evenly and decreased for the crown. Oh, I forgot to mention, this is Making Tracks Heavy DK by Junction Fiber Mill, and this is really nice yarn that I bought for this hat. So I like this yarn. I can't say that I love it. I don't think I would buy it again just because it is quite pricey, but it was fun to try more of a local yarn and to knit it up for my brother for Christmas. So this is his hat. It's another gift knit. Another gift knit that I have that I've been working on is a sweater for my sister-in-law, and I told her in April that I would make her a sweater, and I finally have gotten around to it. And so she just wanted a regular crew neck sweater, so I made that for her. Whoa, let me back up so you can see it. She's quite tall. She's about 6 feet tall, and so I am not 6 feet tall. I'm not close to 6 feet tall. I'm about 5'2", 5'3", so I'm quite a bit shorter than her. So I was kind of worried about the dimensions and making the sweater, because I was like, oh my gosh, this is like not my territory at all in terms of the size and everything. So I used an acrylic yarn for her because I had asked her what type of material she wanted. She said not cotton, anything, like any sort of polyester or whatever. So I used an acrylic yarn. This is Lion Brand Heartland yarn in the color Mount Rainier. It's this really pretty, like nice gray. It's not too dark. I like the way that it looks. It's a little wrinkly, but that's okay. It'll wash. The nice thing about this yarn is that you can put it in the wash and the dryer, and it dries really nicely. It kind of gets really fluffy. But I used kind of a hybrid of the Monday sweater and the Step by Step sweater by Florence to draft this pattern for her. She's about a size medium, but because she's so tall, I just added length to the sleeves as well as the body. And I was actually able to bring this sweater when it was partially done. I think I had the body done at that point, and then I also had, I don't think I'd started the sleeves yet, but I brought it to Thanksgiving and had her try it on so that I could see basically if I needed to make the body longer and if I needed to, how long I needed to make the sleeves. And it fit her pretty well. It is a little bit of a looser sweater, so she's kind of calling it like a Sunday morning sweater, which I think is perfect. And I will say that I realized that I don't think I've been doing short rows exactly the right way, because I did do some short rows, and if you look, hold on one sec. If you look kind of in here, you can see kind of these gaps, like right there and right there. And I think that's when I turned and I didn't do it quite the right way. I'm not going to go back and change this. I might be able to stitch it and tighten it up a little bit, but I'm not going to, because that would require basically undoing the entire sweater, which is not happening, especially since Christmas is in 2 days. But it did make me think I should go back and learn how to do that again, which I did. So that's kind of a learning thing, but I don't think she'll notice or care in really any way. But yeah, this is not a very complicated sweater. It's mainly just, with most gift knits, it is a little challenging to figure out what you need to do for size. And luckily, I mean, this is not going to be a surprise for her, so I was able to kind of get dimensions from her, and I asked her what types of sweaters she likes to buy, and so I was able to use kind of some of the companies where she buys sweaters from to gauge length and everything. So that was most of the puzzle for this, but this knit up really quickly. I think I knit it in a week. I knit it on 6mm needles, and I think it was like a 16 stitch gauge. It knit up quite fast, and also I knit it over Thanksgiving, so I had quite a bit of time. And yeah, I am excited about it, and I think it will be a good kind of cozy weekend sweater, kind of like what she was saying. So I'm gonna give this to her for Christmas, even though it was intended to be for her birthday. I don't think she'll care. And then my last finished object is actually a vest that I made. I'm gonna put it on a hanger so it doesn't look, so it looks a little bit better. And maybe I'll have to stand up so you can see it. But let's see, I made the Drew sweater vest by, I think her name is Marley Bird on Ravelry. Let me put it on a hanger so you can see it better. Okay, here we go. Ready? Okay, so here's the vest. It's showing up pretty well. I made it in Cascade Yarns 220, and it's this really pretty, this is a twisted garter rib pattern all along the front and back panel, and then there's this really pretty fan motif along the button band. Oops, sorry, it's waving around a lot. But you can see that there's this fan panel, and then I chose some pretty buttons to go with it. And then it's got this really kind of cool shawl collar that also has this fan pattern on it. And then you can see right here that I put in a little tag that I actually bought these little labels from Etsy a while ago, but I rarely put them in my knits just because I do not sew. And I by the time I finish a piece, I'm not really in the mood to go and sew down a label, especially because this one is a little, like, it's kind of thin and it kind of frays, so it's not the easiest to knit or to stitch in cleanly. But I knew that my dad would like that, and I know that if I gave this to him, he would probably say like, oh, is there any way to see that you're the one who made this? So I put this in because I think that he would like that. So let's go through this pattern a bit more, because I have a lot of opinions, thoughts, kind of just like learning things about this pattern. But before I get into that, I have a funny backstory to this vest. So I made this vest. My dad, I think, knows it's coming. He doesn't really, but it's like, it's going to be half a surprise. I'll put it down because it's a little bit of a, it's kind of heavy. Maybe I'll put it here. No. I'll just hold it. Anyways, I made this vest for Christmas, obviously. And I remember I was talking to my mom one day and I was telling her, like, I love knitting so much. It's so great, blah, blah, blah. And I was saying to her, like, I think I've overcommitted myself. I told so-and-so that I would make them a sweater. I told so-and-so that I'd make them a sweater. I told so-and-so that I would make them a hat, you know, blah, blah, blah. You've got this whole list of people who you are like, I'm going to make you something. And then you only have 2 hands. I'm not an octopus. That would be great. Imagine how many things you could get done. But alas, I have 2 hands. And so there's only so many things that you can get done. So I kind of have this backlog of people who I've told I would make things for, hence the sweater that I said that I would make in April, and now it's December. But I am getting through them. I will say, if I tell you I will do something, I will pretty much all the time. So I am slowly but surely getting through it. And so I was saying to her, you know, I haven't made anything for Dad. I also haven't made anything for her yet. I made her a hat a while ago, but planning on making her mittens. But I haven't made anything for my dad yet. And I was like, you know, I haven't made anything for Dad. I don't know. Is there something, do you think he would like? And she goes, Dad wants a vest. So I said, okay. You know, vests are great because they don't have sleeves, which is really nice. And so I said to her, okay, that sounds good. I would like to take some measurements of the vests that he has because I know he wears vests pretty often. And so I went and looked at some of his vests. I took some measurements. I was like, okay, this is perfect. I can kind of base this off of some patterns on Ravelry and find a vest that he likes. And she showed me another sweater that she said, this is a really great sweater that he likes, but it's too heavy. So I got a sense of like how warm he wanted something to be. And then I also knew that he didn't want a pullover vest, but that it would be something that would button up. So this is all very useful information. And so I'm like, okay, this is great. I will try and get a vest done for Christmas. Even though I don't have him for Secret Santa, I was like, I really want to do this for him. I'm going to do this for him. It'll be fun. Okay, I'm going to do this. So I ask her what color he wants. And she says, I think he has a lot of blue and gray stuff. I think an orange vest would be really great for him. Like not a really orange vest, but not too red. And so I'm like, okay. So I go to the yarn store, I take a bunch of pictures of different oranges and I send them to her and I said, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? So her all these different pictures and she says, I like this one. So I don't know if you remember a while ago, or maybe in my yarn stash tour, I showed this, but I bought some yarn. It's superwash yarn from Haiku. I think it's the Sueño superwash yarn. And so I bought that. And I was really excited. I was like, this is really nice, soft yarn that he's going to like. And then I was back down at my parents' for another reason. And I was talking to them again about knitting, surprise. And I had said to my dad, I knew what my mom had said already, but I said to him, you know, if I were to knit you something, what do you want? And he gets kind of excited and he's like, oh, well, I'm not going to ask you to make me anything because I know it takes a long time, but I would really love a vest. And so I'm like, oh, surprise. But luckily they were aligned. And so I said, okay. And then I'm kind of thinking and I'm like, all right, gift knits are fun, but they're also kind of stressful because unlike just buying, I don't know, a bowl for someone at the store or something like that, there's a lot of time and effort that goes into it. And so I thought, should I make this a surprise or should I tell him? I don't really know. So I was kind of dithering as I'm having this conversation with him. And so I said, okay, if I made you a vest, would you want to see the pattern or would you want it to be a surprise? And he was kind of like, oh, I kind of want it to be a surprise. But I think he also was thinking the same thing where he didn't want it to be like he sees the vest and then doesn't really like the pattern. So he said to me, I don't want something old manish. And mind you, I had already bought yarn for this and I had already bought a pattern for this. I was originally going to make the professor vest for him. And so I showed him the pattern. Again, he doesn't know that I had already purchased the yarn or the pattern. I show him the pattern that I'm theoretically going to make him. Hadn't started it, luckily. I gauge flushed, but I hadn't done anything else. And I show him the pattern. I say, what about this? He goes, it's kind of old manish. And so I'm like, okay, noted. We will not be doing that. And so then I'm like, oh no. Well, good thing I didn't start. So then I'm quickly like searching through Ravelry. We're kind of in the middle of doing various things. So we're talking and doing other things. And so then I pull up the Drew sweater vest. And I show it to him and I say, okay, what about something like this? Because I know that he didn't want a vest with a V-neck, but oftentimes vests that are button up have some sort of V-neck. And so I was trying to find something that was not a V-neck, but that would still button up. And I'm not at the point of my knitting, at least, I don't think, where I could just take a round neck vest and then, you know, come up with the math and everything to make it a button up. So I wanted to be able to follow a pattern. So I showed him the Drew sweater vest and he goes, oh yeah, that's really cool. And he sees kind of the detail and the collar and everything. And he goes, yeah, I really like that. I think I'd like that. So I'm like, okay, great. I will do this, kind of put the conversation to rest, do the dishes or whatever I need to do. And then think about that. And then I was thinking some more and I thought, well, now that I know that the pattern I chose for him was way off, maybe I should double check on the color as well. And so I asked him the next morning, what color would you like your vest to be? And I had just finished making a sweater for my niece who had just turned 9, and I made her a sweater that was kind of, it's a blue, I'll put in a picture so you can see it, but it was mainly blue with some speckles of color, and it is a cute and fun vest or sweater. And so he says, I like the color of her sweater. I want a vest that's kind of similar to that, like kind of a lavender blue type of thing. So I'm standing there nodding, like, okay, that is the total opposite of the yarn that I have in stash, and I do not have lavender blue yarn. This is maybe around Thanksgiving, maybe a little bit before Thanksgiving. I can't remember if it was before or after Thanksgiving, but it was around Thanksgiving. So Christmas is fast approaching at this point, and I'm thinking, I don't have the yarn for this. I have the wrong pattern for this. This is not ideal. And so I totally reworked my plans and was like, I'm going to make the Drew sweater vest and I'm going to purchase new yarn for this. I decided to go with Cascade 220 because they have so many different colors. I even showed him the color that I was thinking because I was just like, okay, obviously my guessing game is way off, so I'm just going to show you what I'm thinking. And so I show him the color. He goes, yeah, I like that color. So I order this, and I think this one is called Cloud Heather. I always get confused because I ordered this with another one, which I think is called Stonewash, and I think this one is like Cloud Heather or something like that. I'll put in the name of it. So I ordered those two yarns together. It comes, I'm like, this is beautiful, this is perfect, this is exactly what I was thinking of for him. Fast forward, I finally have this vest for him. I started it on the 3rd of December, and as I'm looking through the pattern, so I purchased the pattern. The pattern cost $13, which, if you are familiar with buying patterns on Ravelry, this is a pricier pattern. I am not immediately turned off though by a pattern that's expensive because I know how much time goes into trying to create a pattern and that it's not really a profitable business unless you're like Petite Knit and sell a gajillion of your patterns every day. So I'm not against that by any means. However, I do think that I have kind of a higher standard. It's kind of like a subconscious higher standard if I'm paying more for a pattern. So I buy a pattern. I kind of looked at some of the comments on the other projects, and there was kind of mixed reviews. It was like, I started this sweater 3 years ago or this vest 3 years ago and I finally finished it, or it's like, I made this and my uncle loves it, or whatever. It was kind of mixed. One of them was saying, you know, the pattern can be a little fiddly, but just stick with it. And so I was kind of like, whatever, I know that this is a pattern that my dad wants, so I will figure it out. So I buy it, and then I finally look through the pattern, and I see, one, that the sizing seems a little strange to me. My dad is usually of size medium in the US, and so I'm looking at the pattern, and I see the size that he would be. And the measurements in the pattern were for the finished bust circumference as opposed to the actual bust circumference that it's supposed to fit. And so the size medium, I think, okay, that's the perfect size for him. But then I'm looking at the instructions and it says it's supposed to have negative ease. I think actually the size large was supposed to be like the good size for him based on the circumference, the finished circumference, if it were to have positive ease. But in the pattern, it says it's supposed to have negative ease, which I think is kind of bizarre, but I don't know how often people actually wear vests buttoned up. At least I don't see him wearing his vests zipped up or buttoned up. So I think, okay, whatever, I will make the size medium. Hopefully it will fit him. Go with that. I gauge swatch, sort of. I didn't really do a formal gauge swatch. I just kind of did the pattern a few times and looked at how big it was on my needles, and it was too big. So I think that the yarn I used maybe was a little heavy for this pattern. I did use Cascade 220. I think it's categorized as a worsted weight yarn. It might be an Aran weight yarn. I'm not sure. I would categorize it as an Aran weight yarn. And the pattern calls for 4.5 millimeter needles. And if you're working with an Aran weight yarn, that is a pretty small needle size. And so I'm immediately like, oh no, what have I done? I didn't think about this before I started and committed to it. And my gauge was too big too, so I had to go down a needle size, and I ended up using 4 millimeter needles for this. And so then I'm immediately like, okay, it's December 3rd. I have like basically 20 days to make this if I want it to be blocked in time for Christmas. And so I'm immediately panicking, like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this done. That's before I realized that this pattern is done in panels. So you first do the back panel, and then you do the front panel, and then you do the other front panel. So you're working flat for the entire vest, which I think some people don't mind doing that. I personally have learned that I am not a fan of flat knitting. I do not like it. I will avoid it at all costs. I want to learn how to steek, so I do not have to do it. So that was kind of discouraging as well. The pattern itself is pretty well written, I will say. It is not, there are charts, but I just used kind of like the row by row instructions. One of the things that I don't like though, because it was knit in panels, was that it would say like knit these rows and then knit X number of inches and then go to the next step. So I would do that, but then if I was trying to mirror the right and the left side of the vest panels, then I was also trying to mirror the rows that I would be finishing on before I moved on to the next step. And so I was being kind of oblivious and trying to rush one day. And so I was doing, I think, the left front panel second. And so I was like, okay, I finished the number of rows that I had finished on the right panel, and move on, finish the entire front panel, and then line them up. And I'm like, oh no, one of the panels is bigger than the other. I don't know what to do. Like, I follow the rows exactly. I'm not really sure what's going on. Was my gauge like that off? I just I blocked it and I stretched it, and it kind of fits, but you can tell when you hold it up that one of the panels is a little bit shorter than the other. I'm hoping it's not super obvious when he wears it, but one panel definitely is a little bit longer than the other. You can't really tell when I'm holding it like this, but so that part of the pattern and just the design kind of frustrated me, just because I feel like if your row gauge is on, you should be saying which rows to, like how many rows to knit as opposed to the number of inches you should be knitting. I guess it could go either way, but that was kind of my thinking behind it when I was doing this. One of the things that I did really like about this pattern is that the button band is already knit into the panels. So I didn't have to go back and pick up a gazillion stitches to knit the button band. It's actually, so this entire panel from here to here, from here to here is all knit in one piece, including the collar, like one side of the collar. And then it's the same thing on this side, where from here to here and here to here is knit in one side. And then the back panel is knit in one big piece as well. Whoa, where's the... So it's kind of, it's pieced together, and then you can see in the collar that as you're working it, you stop, and then you don't even bind these stitches off. I just stitched them together when I was putting everything back together. So that's how the collar works. And then you get this really pretty shawl collar without having to do pick up stitches for button bands. So I did think that that was pretty clever, and I liked that aspect of the pattern. So I do think that this is a doable pattern. I would not recommend starting it less than a month before you're planning on giving it to someone, if that's the case. I would also recommend, this is my unsolicited advice, asking the person if this is what they want, because this is a lot of work. Doing twisted garter stitch, I found, was pretty hard on my hands, especially with a heavier weight yarn on smaller needles. So I think that this is definitely worth the work that you put into it. It just requires a fair amount of attention as well as time. This was the only thing I was knitting on pretty much while I was knitting this, and it took me quite a bit of time to do so. But I know that my dad's gonna be really happy, and I'm hoping that he'll wear it. I hope that it's not too itchy or anything for him, and that it fits him all right. I think because I use smaller needles, the front panels aren't quite as wide as I wanted them to be. But again, I don't think he's gonna wear it buttoned up, so I think it'll be fine. The buttons are more just for show, and I like them a lot, but yeah. So this is the Drew sweater vest. I will report back on how the gifting itself goes, and hopefully it fits him. If not, I don't really know what I'll do. It does not fit me, so we'll see. I think it will though. I actually asked him if I could borrow one of his sweaters or one of his vests, so that I could kind of ballpark it, and the back panel's the right size. It's just the front panels that are a little narrow, so it'll just be an open knit. It'll be okay. Okay, that was a lot of finished objects. It's not usually like this. It's mainly just because it's been a little while since I have last recorded a podcast, because I've been so busy gift knitting and everything. But those are all my finished objects. I do have a couple of things on the needles going, and then I also have some acquisitions. So if you're still here, there's still more. So why don't I start with some of the things that I have on my needles right now. And actually this one isn't even on my needles right now, because I needed the needles for a different thing. But I, a while ago, started a cowl. This is the, what is it? The Sea Breeze cowl, I think. I will correct myself in the caption if the name is different. But this is a pattern that I found on Ravelry when I was looking for an idea for a cowl. And this is also wool that I bought from Rhinebeck. So I actually have used now all 3 of the yarns that I bought at Rhinebeck, which I'm quite pleased with. And I wanted a cowl to wear around my neck when it's so cold outside. So I found this really cool textured cowl pattern. You can see it here. It's a little more subtle, because this is a darker yarn, and it also is a tweed yarn. But I do think that the pattern shows up quite nicely. It's got these kind of like arrows along the side. Let me move this so that it's more clear. But I really like this pattern. I will say it is another one of those patterns where you kind of have to work row by row. And then I made the mistake of bringing this to Thanksgiving and trying to work on it while there were like a gazillion people around. And then I messed up. And so I need to go back and figure out where I was. But I was not in the mindset to do that when I finished my dad's vest, because I was like, I just want something that is mindless. I do not want to work on something where I'm like looking row by row for that. Okay, sorry to jump all over the place. My last note about my dad's vest is that what I found with this pattern was that it was a balance, or I would say it just tipped the scale from being a mindless knit because of the twisted garter stitch and all the different, especially when you get to the front panels, because you're following a different pattern for the fan panel along the button band and the collar, that you had to be just as engaged. But I also found, because of the twisted garter stitch, it was just kind of tedious. And so that was also another reason why I wasn't the biggest fan of the pattern. I think the finished object is great. I think that this is definitely a pattern where you are working on it for the finished product. It's not so much an enjoyable experience, at least in my opinion. But that brings me back to the cowl. Sorry to jump around so much. Where you do need to be working on this row by row and you need to be paying attention, and that was just not my mindset when I finished my dad's vest. And so I still want to finish this. I think it's about like halfway done, but I just need to sit down and take the time to figure out where I was in the pattern and everything before I pick it back up. I know that if I try and do that when I'm not in the right mindset, I'll probably just end up ripping out the whole thing, which would be sad and not really worth it. So I am kind of giving this a little bit of a break before I finish it. Okay, my other work in progress that I will show you is my kind of prize to myself for finishing my dad's vest on time. And this is what I'm calling my revival sweater. This is a Monday sweater. It's knitting up quite nicely. I started it as soon as I finished my dad's vest because I really wanted to knit stockinette and in the round, so that I figured this would be perfect. But the reason why it's called my revival sweater is because I knit a Monday sweater in the fall. It was the first thing that I knit after I finished my degree. And I knit it out of Berroco Comfort, which is a 50% nylon, 50% acrylic yarn. It's really soft. It's really cozy. I love the sweater so much. And then I washed it and it shrunk, and it doesn't fit me. It is not appropriate on me, so I'm giving it to my 9-year-old niece for Christmas. That's how much it shrunk. So I wanted to make another one of those sweaters because I loved the fit so much, and I just found like it was a really simple, easy to throw on sweater, and I wanted to make another one. The other piece to this revival story is that a while ago, I made an Eva cardigan out of this really nice yarn that my mom gifted me for Christmas last year. This is Minos Still Uruguay yarn, and this is the Marla line, so it's really nice yarn. And I made an Eva cardigan out of it. And unfortunately, I didn't really understand what I was doing, especially with superwash yarn at the time, and I knit it on like 6mm needles to try and hit gauge. This is considered a DK weight yarn, but it is, I do think, a bit thinner than what I would expect a DK weight yarn to be, at least in my own hands. And so I was trying to hit gauge. I think the Eva cardigan really, it says it calls for a DK weight yarn, but I really think it actually calls for more of like a worsted weight or like a light worsted weight yarn, especially because the suggested yarn for the pattern is Pure Gint. And so when I blocked the sweater, first of all, the stitches in the sweater were massive. You could basically like see through them. They were huge. The sweater grew. It was like I don't know if you've ever seen those little like, I think they're sponges or something, I don't know, but you get them in like this tiny little thing. They're usually in like little animals or something, and you put them in water and they grow. It was basically like that, but in sweater form. So when I put the sweater on, the sleeves were like dangling off my arms. The armpits were like down to my waist. It was just it did not fit whatsoever. It looked ridiculous, and it's really nice yarn. So I was like, okay, the end. We are going to scrap this sweater, and I unwound the entire cardigan, which was a chore in and of itself because the button band was a pain to undo. I spent like over 3 hours probably unwinding that, but I didn't want to waste the yarn. So I saved the yarn, and I figured that it would be perfect for a stockinette sweater since it has this really pretty variation. So this is my revival sweater of the pattern that I tried to knit, but then the sweater shrunk, and with the yarn that I used in the wrong way for a different cardigan. And it's turning out quite nicely. I'm making the first size, and the first size calls for quite a bit of positive ease. I mean, all the sizes do. It's like 15 to 20 centimeters of positive ease, which is ridiculous, I think. It's not really ridiculous, I guess. It's just not really my cup of tea. So I stopped doing the increases, I think 2 or 3 increases short of it. And then I also will say that my gauge for this is there are more stitches per inch than the pattern calls for. And so it's I'm getting a smaller sweater basically by doing the same number of increases. So I tried this on yesterday. It fits perfectly. I'm hoping that when I block this, it doesn't grow a ton. I'm just going to be really careful when I'm handling it so that hopefully it doesn't grow too much. But I think even with a little bit of growth, it should be fine. I just don't want it to be massive. And I think by using 4mm needles instead of 6mm needles, that these stitches will hold and hopefully I'll be able to wear this sweater a lot. I just love the 3-stitch raglan on this sweater. It's such a good sweater. I know that it's just a basic raglan, but I am very much looking forward to being able to wear it. And because this is superwash yarn, it's really soft. It's so nice to work with. It's kind of slippery, but again, having just come off of this vest that took a lot of time and thinking and everything, this has been so fun to knit and just kind of like breeze through, not think about the knitting itself, and be able to think about other things while I'm working on it. So I'm hoping to finish this over the holiday break, and then perhaps this will be a finished object in my next episode. But that is my Monday sweater and my Monday/revival sweater. Okay, so that is it for my works in progress right now. My next kind of more engaging project besides for my cowl is a pair of mittens for my mom. And so hopefully I'll be able to do and start and do that over the holidays as well. So that is all of my works in progress right now. And then I have some acquisitions. So I decided to take a field trip to the Woolly Thistle, which is in New Hampshire. It's not too far away from me, so I decided that I would kind of just go for a little exploration one day. So I did, and of course I bought some yarn. I chose very on brand some sock yarn in blue and green. So this is West Yorkshire Spinners signature 4-ply yarn, which it says it's perfect for socks. It's a 25% nylon, 75% wool, and then also says that it contains 35% blue face luster, so they're quite soft. And I was actually looking for non-superwash yarn because I kind of wanted to try making socks out of non-superwash to see if they would be a little bit hardier, but this is apparently one of their only superwash yarns that they that they carry in the store. And I didn't like the colors of their non-superwash yarns, so I just decided to go with these ones. And I have some leftover sock yarn from some other socks that I've done, and then I also just kind of want to make some more solid color socks. And so I picked these 2 colors. And I walked out of the store and I was really excited about the yarn, and then I looked down and I was wearing a blue coat and green pants, and I was like, oh no, what have I done? This also matches some of my acrylic yarn that I'm trying to use, and so this is very on brand in terms of the colors. And I might make some Hermione everyday socks with these, or find some other kind of fun textured pattern socks to make, but I love making socks, and wearing them is also quite nice too. So these are 2 yarns that I got rather recently from the Woolly Thistle. And then, I also have this other sock yarn, although the nylon percentage is kind of low, and I was thinking of maybe pairing it with one of these or something like that. I think it'd be pretty. Anyways, that is the yarn that I have acquired since my last episode. There are all of these sales going on right now, and it's really hard not to buy more yarn. Like, I think Knitting for Olive had a 15% off all yarn yesterday, but I was like, I have enough yarn, I shouldn't buy more. I will resist the temptation. There will be more sales. I will use my stash yarn in the meantime. Okay, so that's the yarn that I bought recently, and then I also kind of did a fun project more recently. I quite a while ago actually got into pottery, and this is actually even before I became really into knitting. I did a fair amount of pottery, and so I signed up for the open studio pass at a local pottery studio, and I was thinking, I have a lot of bowls, I have a lot of mugs, and so what else can I make with pottery? So I decided that, kind of on brand with my more recent obsession with knitting, I would try and make a yarn bowl. And so I made 2 yarn bowls. I actually made 4, but I'll show you 2 today. So I made these yarn bowls. This is one. I'll hold it up so you can see it more closely. And this is the other. Wow. This is the other one. I thought that these were really fun to make. It's basically like making a bowl, but then you just have to carve out this little swirly thingy. And I've seen them on sale in various places made out of both clay or wood. And I thought that they were kind of excessive, and I was like, I don't need one of those. But then I figured, like, if I had the opportunity to make one, I may as well try. And so then I tried using it, and I was like, oh, it is actually useful. What do you know? So I've quite enjoyed using them. These ones are actually a little small. They will not hold a full 100-gram skein of yarn. I think that, like, once you use a little bit, though, it fits in. And so I have really enjoyed having this on the table while I knit, so that my yarn is not flying across the living room while I'm using it and not picking up all the fur from my dogs and everything. So I really enjoyed making these. I made one for my friend, and then I have another one that I made that I'm going to give to a family friend. And I remember when I was making them, some of the other people in Open Studio were like, oh, some people recognized what they were, and other people were like, oh, that's a cool pattern. What are you going to do with that? And then somebody had mentioned, oh, are you a nitwit? Which is a funny phrase. And I was like, oh yeah, I love knitting. And then everybody's like, oh, it's a knitting bowl. And so I think some other people were inspired to try it. And so hopefully other people in the studio will also get more into knitting because of this. I was very excited to be talking about knitting in the clay studio with other people. So the studio pass has since ended, but in the future, maybe I would make more. I also made this mug. I have some tea right now, which I haven't been drinking yet, so it's probably gonna be cold by the end of this episode, but I made this mug, and I was kind of hoping that it would look like a yarn ball by carving out like various segments. Here, I'll hold it up so you can see it. But yeah, it's not quite like that. It's still pretty, but it like doesn't really look like a yarn ball, so that's okay. It was still fun to make. Okay, so that's my non-clay or non-fiber acquisitions / makes of the day. And then the last thing I'll share with you is for Christmas. My husband and I are terrible at surprising each other, and we don't really like to be surprised, so we just kind of tell each other what we want. And so for Christmas, I told him that I really wanted Veronika Lindberg's most recent book, Knits to Wear. And so the other day he gave me as an early Christmas present the book, and so I have a copy of her Knits to Wear book, and I'm so excited to knit some of the patterns in here. This is a pattern by her, and it's probably her most popular pattern, but she's such a talented person and has so many intriguing designs. Like her book is just so pretty, and the patterns are so beautiful, even if they're not ones that I would wear. And she has a really nice mix of kind of more simple patterns, and then some that are very intricate, like this sweater. I think, what is this called? This is called the My Favorite Story sweater. I don't remember what this is called, but she's got some sweaters that are just so intricate, and maybe I'll be brave and try one. Like this one is so pretty. I love this one. But I will say one of the sweaters that I do want to make in here pretty soon, I'm gonna make it for a friend actually, is her coffee run sweater, which reminds me a little bit of the My Favorite Things sweater number 9, or the Yoon sweater by November Knits. I'm trying to find it, sorry, one sec. Hold on. It's just a very simple raglan sweater, but it looks very cozy, and I think I'm gonna make it for a friend in a bit, just because you can never knit enough for other people. So this is the coffee run sweater. It's so pretty. Whoa. It's very simple. Will go with anything. I think I will probably make one for myself as well. So this is my other acquisition that is not directly fiber, but it is obviously knitting related. And so with that, I think that is the conclusion of what I have to say today. I will hopefully be back with some more regularly filmed podcasts in the new year. But in the meantime, I hope that if you celebrate Christmas, you have a really nice Christmas. If you celebrate Hanukkah, you have a nice Hanukkah season. any other holidays that you celebrate. I really hope that you enjoy your season. Hopefully get some time off, take a break. And I will wish you a happy new year, because I don't think anything will be coming out from Black Dog Knits until then. And if you like this video, please do feel free to give it a like, as well as subscribe if you want to see some more kind of similar content. And also I do have an Instagram account, and I think it's black.dog.knits on Instagram, and I do post kind of more everyday updates there if you're interested in that as well. But for now, I will wish you a happy new year and happy knitting. Thanks. Bye.